Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting for Monday, October 21st, 2024. I'm going to publicly shame a few of our council members walking in a little bit.
Present.
Did we get started?
And Gil's walking in from the backside, so that's the first time I've seen you walk in from that way. So I will now call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Schultz.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Allbaker.
Here.
Canfield.
Here.
Chrisman. Here. Dunn. Here. All members present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, if everyone's willing and able, could you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And I'll look for a motion to approve the regular meeting of October 2024
moved.
meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion seconded, and any conversation from council? Any from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, any agenda revisions?
Item 22 from the resolution calendar has been removed since we received payment.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to public forum. So speakers will have one opportunity for speak up to 5 minutes on topics relevant to city business. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak tonight? All right, seeing none, we will now move on to staff updates. I believe we've got one from Stephanie.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce for the council and the public that there will be a ribbon cutting at the Orchard Hill Park with the pickleball complex on Friday, October 25th at 4 p.m. So hope to see you there.
And thank you to everyone who's putting a lot of time and effort on that project. All right, special order of business, item number 2, a public hearing on the application for voluntary annexation of certain real estate to the city of Cedar Falls. Do we have a motion to receive and file proof of publication
So
of
moved.
notice of hearing? Been motioned and seconded. And any discussion from council? I don't know. Yeah, but any discussion from public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, any written communications on
I have no
this?
written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and I believe we have comments from staff Shane, or staff comments from Shane. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Mayor. On the agenda is a public hearing for the approval of a voluntary annexation application for property into the city of Cedar Falls. This property is located along South Union Road and West Ridgeway Avenue. It's some properties that the city has acquired over the past couple of years for future inclusion into the city's industrial park. The city of Cedar Falls owns 4 parcels totaling 80.83 acres of land. There is 1 vacant parcel owned by a private citizens. That's a ½ acre in size, so the total annexation area is 81.33 acres. The property owners, the Gaffneys, have not signed the annexation application at this time, so at this time the annexation is being treated as what's considered an 80-20 annexation, which means 80% of the land being annexed is voluntary and less than 20% is non-consenting. This type of annexation request can still be considered a voluntary annexation request, so long as the reason for including the non-consenting landowner is to avoid creating an island or to create more uniform boundaries. In this case, the inclusion of that half acre parcel will create a more uniform boundary, as the new city limit line will run down the middle of South Union Road. And if we did not include that property, there would be a little notch out along South Union Road. If council remembers, back in August, council did set the date of public hearing for today for the annexation request. Part of that requires the city to take certain steps to prepare for the annexation hearing today. The first was to have a consultation meeting with the Board of Supervisors and the Cedar Falls Township trustees. That meeting was held on September 9th and included myself and Councilmember Latta, who was representing this city council. Both the Board of Supervisors and the Township trustees then had an opportunity to offer written recommendations for modification per state code. We did not receive any sort of written objections or modifications from those 2 entities. Again, the public hearing notice was published pursuant to state code on October 3rd. We did send out notices that were required by state code, including all the property owners surrounding it and Blackhawk County and and the surrounding communities. This property is within 2 miles of the city of Hudson, so we did have to notify the city of Hudson as well. Assuming council approves the annexation application tonight, the next step will be for the annexation application to be submitted to the City Development Board at IEDA. Once the state reviews that, which probably will happen in the next month or two, then that gets finalized by the state. There would be two more actions that would have to come to council after final approval. One is to certify the population that's coming into the city. Right now, there is no one living in any of those properties. And then the other action would be to amend our ward and precinct map. So those two actions would probably come to council in early 2025. So with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you, Shane.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Graham, can you explain the significance for the non-voluntary, non-consenting owner? What, I don't know, privileges or what's the significance? Does it mean anything in the grand scheme of things, or?
Not necessarily. So in 80-20 application means, like I said, you have 80% of the landowners are consenting, 20% or less is non-consenting. However, in the state code, you can treat it as basically 100% voluntary annexation if the property you're including creates a more uniform city boundary, of which we're doing. So we feel that the state will be in agreement with the city to include this half-acre parcel, even though they're non-consenting, because it will create a more
So it doesn't,
line.
the property owner then would be subject to city ordinances where before they would not have been outside the limits? Is that kind of the gist of it?
Correct. Yeah, one of the actions that we'll be taking after we annex this property is to rezone the property. Per state code, any annexing property you annex into the city becomes zoned agricultural. So we'll want to take action in the next few months to rezone that to most likely future industrial. And I've had conversations with this property owner, so the property, and we've mailed notices, so they are aware of this annexation.
I just add, Councilmember Cruz, that just because it isn't 100% voluntary doesn't mean that the board isn't going to approve it. Most often they do, and there really isn't a delineated objection either from those folks. Okay. So we look forward to approval.
That would be my question, Mr. Rogers, if they are just unresponsive to the request or if they've said, no, we don't want to. And I guess that answers that question.
Mm-hmm. And by saying that they don't want to, that doesn't give them any ability to not do city ordinances, or just, it's just, okay.
No, and I don't know that they necessarily said they object to the annexation itself. Really it's not really being able to just sign the documents, I think, more than anything else, which is fine, it's their right.
Okay. It's not like they have to run water, sewer to them, because that's not going to be, it's going to be industrial.
That's a separate issue, but it's bare ground right now, so once we rezone it.
Okay, just curious.
Thank you. Any questions for Shane? All right, thank you. And any comments from the public on this item? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve a resolution approving the voluntary annexation of property to the city of Cedar Falls, which lies within 2 miles of the corporate boundaries of the city of Hudson.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and seconded, and roll call vote, please.
Had to get my computer warmed up.
Can't screw up the first one. Just wait for yours, Kelly.
I'm getting, no, sorry. There you go. All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 3, public hearing on the city's FFY23 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for the Community Development Block Grant funded activities from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Do a motion to receive and file proof of notice of hearing.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion, council? Any from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, any written communications on this?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And then we have staff comments from Melissa Denning. Thank you, Melissa.
I thought I was going to get out of having to speak. This is our public comment hearing for the CAPER, which is the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Review. Move this.
Yeah. Just for everyone watching online.
Okay. So we have submitted that to you. It is in your packet, so you had that for your review in advance of tonight's meeting. This closes the public comment period because we haven't received any written or verbal comments from anyone in the public since it was published on October 3rd. So you can see the progress we made. It was a good year last year. We hope for an even better year this year with our allocation. And so I look forward to being able to come before you and provide you with reports and updates of all the good things that are happening with these dollars.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from council? Do we have any public comments tonight? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve resolution approving and authorizing submission of the city's FFY23 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for the Community Development Block Grant funded activities from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded, and roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 4, a public hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to allowing accessory dwelling units in all zoning districts that allow single-unit detached dwellings. Do we have a motion to receive and file proof of publication of notice of hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion from council? Or anything from the public? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And motion carries. Madam Clerk, any written communications?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And then we have staff comments from Chris Seavey. Thank you, Chris.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. In a Committee of the Whole meeting on March 18th of this year, the City Council made a referral directing staff to prepare this ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units, commonly referred to as ADUs, in all residential zones. Currently, they are only allowed downtown. So I'm going to give a brief overview of what this is. So what is an ADU? An ADU is a smaller secondary dwelling unit that is accessory to a principal dwelling unit. They are commonly created within the principal dwelling. For example, in a daylight basement or within a detached accessory structure, such as above a garage. In cities that allow them, properties with an ADU are differentiated from duplexes, primarily through limitations and restrictions that ensure the ADU is subordinate to a principal dwelling. This slide outlines the advantages of an ADU policy for homeowners in the city. These are also in the staff report. In the interest of time, I don't intend on covering them here, but if there are further questions or discussion points, we can go over those. Staff is proposing a policy that is not far off from what is allowed downtown. These are a few of the standards that are defined in the proposed policy. It is, like in downtown, it is proposed to only allow them on owner-occupied properties, have no more than one ADU per lot, and limit them to one bedroom. The size limitation differs slightly from downtown's code. The proposed code language will limit the size to 50% of the principal dwelling, or 800 square feet, whichever is less. To minimize the complication of design standards, staff proposes to only allow them in a detached structure or in the detached structure in the rear yard or within the existing envelope of the principal structure. In other words, only minor additions to accommodate an entrance to the ADU will be allowed on the principal structure. Also, a 5-foot setback is proposed on the side and rear lot lines. There was some commentary in the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting regarding the owner-occupied requirement. Just want to touch on that a little bit for clarity. This ADU policy is regarding the allowance of units that are accessory to a principal dwelling. as a separate issue, if we want to expand the ability to have a duplex on a lot without the same rental restriction, there are other areas of the code that can be updated to that effect, such as lot width and lot size requirements. Those requirements for duplexes that are in the individual zoning districts. Design standards were also important to define. Staff proposes that the ADUs only be allowed in a permanent structure, so no tiny house on wheels. The materials and windows should match the principal structure. A separate secure entrance to the unit is required, either from the exterior or from a shared foyer. A paved path to the entrance, 2 egress windows in basement units for safety and ventilation purposes. No exterior stairs leading to an upper story would be allowed for access to an ADU located within the principal residence. However, exterior stairs would be allowed to access a unit above a detached garage with the way that it's currently written. I did want to provide a quick explanation for how this provision is being placed in the code, as shown in the proposed code language in the ordinance form in your packet. Staff proposes to have an accessory uses section under which ADUs can be enumerated and standards can be defined. The accessory use code section serves several purposes. First, it defines accessory uses. Then it outlines general standards applicable to all accessory uses. For a quick overview on that, these standards essentially define the accessory use's relationship to principal uses. They are subordinate to, have the same ownership as, are consistent with, and are co-located with principal uses. Lastly, this section provides a place to enumerate the accessory uses. For now, it will just have ADUs, but as we have other uses necessary to define, or as we undertake to better organize the code, this will be an appropriate place for several other items already in our code, such as detached accessory structures or swimming pools. Just for clarity, the accessory uses section does not substantively change any policies related to accessory uses. We just didn't have a well-defined place for them in the code, nor a method to organize them, so this makes sense for accessory dwellings. So with that, the Planning and Zoning Commission, with a vote of 7 to 1, and then 1 abstain, they recommended approval of these proposed amendments to Chapter 26 zoning, which amendments outline the standards by which accessory dwelling units may be allowed citywide. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Mr. Sevi, was there any substantive conversation around why only 1 bedroom? I mean, an 800 square foot home was larger than my first home, and we had 2 bedrooms. Is there a possibility of that second bedroom or office space? How do they envision that? Did they talk about it at all?
Yeah, there's no limitation in terms of office space. There are some defining things in the building code that could allow another room, a den or an office, that kind of thing, to be allowed in these kinds of spaces. You know, the 800 square feet accommodates very much people who are aging in place and they want a little bit more space. They might have their grandkids come over and that kind of thing, but it'd still be 1 bedroom. Now, to answer your question, one bedroom is the standard that's in our downtown code. That's what we were reflecting here. Not saying that can't change at some point, but it's the discussion in the Planning and Zoning Commission was definitely around maybe taking the most cautious approach first, and then if we feel in the future to look at this again, then we should take a look.
And for clarity, I assume if we were to recommend a change to allowing 2 bedrooms, that would have to go back to P&Z, I would assume. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Mayor? Yep. Thank you. One thing that stood out there in the earlier slide, you talked about 2 egress windows. In standard rental codes, we have 2 egress points. We have a window and a door. That should be more than sufficient for an ADU. Why would you need 2 egress windows in addition to the front doors being
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, in consultation with the building official, that's what was recommended. Given some situations that we could see in floor plans, it made a lot of sense to have 2 egress windows, one in the bedroom and then one in the living space, wherever that would be. So that was just a recommendation. I don't know that I can entirely speak to why and the reasoning why.
Okay, then if I may continue, when you restrict it to 1 bedroom, where does it fit for a parent and a child, and the child's old enough to really have their own bedroom? You're limiting the use of an ADU to be young children with the mother, father, or couples, married or not, and so on. So I think it'd be prudent to kind of follow along with other comments here to now kind of adjust this to be more applicable to real-world examples. I mean, in this case, if it's appropriate now, I'd do an amendment or a motion to amend.
Because I think any changes would have to go back to B and Z.
That's fine.
So we
That's the point of,
essentially, just quick, so I check, Attorney Rogers, would we be, if we wanted changes to this, would we just be turning this down and then sending it back to P and Z to review?
Refer it back to P and Z.
Would we make any sort of official referral or amendments that we're asking them to review or propose, or?
Well, you wouldn't pass the ordinance, so, and then there could be a referral back to P and Z thereafter, as soon as you want to refer it back.
so we could do it at the end of the meeting.
Good.
Okay. Well, I guess I would go along that path that I feel it's important to get the biggest bang for your buck, and doing an ADU in Cedar Falls is to have allowance for a 2-bedroom ADU for that purpose. And I'd also like to address the egress points of egress in a property as well. Not just be forced to have 2 windows where you could have 1 window in the front door. Because in studio apartments and that sort of thing, that would be very viable. Just trying to eliminate restrictions and make it really useful as a tool. So, because I'm thinking of other communities that I've been in, other states, that's what I see. And I could even talk about the owner-occupied. Almost all of the ADUs I'm familiar with along the West Coast and down south, there's no restriction on owner-occupied. You can have the front house a rental, the back house ADU is a rental. So I think that would be useful in a community such as ours. It's a college town. So,
If I can ask, if I can ask for clarification, you kind of mentioned or alluded to, rather than allowing ADUs on a rental, you would essentially say it'd be cleaner to actually just update our current policies around rentals to allow for duplexes, because essentially it's 2 living units on one.
Correct. Yeah. And
Well, go ahead.
well, no, I forgot what I was going to say.
When you go to the duplex aspect, now you're introducing parking requirements off-street and driveways, more concrete poured, where the ADU has the feature, as I understand it, you have a sidewalk, I guess, of some sort, permeable, pavers, what have you, where the duplexing is a whole different can of worms. We just, I want to say 2014 or so, we had I think it was called the Rental Conversion Task Force, and there was a big hubbub about eliminating duplexing of properties, and that might have been in the same structure, where they didn't want you to take a big house and then cut it in half and make 2 units on it. Neighborhoods didn't like that. Now, the housing situation may have evolved to the point where neighborhoods might be more receptive to this. But, I think, to me, to have less requirements for paving and what have you, that the ADU should be defined to be allowed on a rental property. 2 rentals, both parts of it would be a rental, not just owner-occupied. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Schultz?
So I don't agree with that. Would it just be a duplex? I guess, at that point, so then apply for a duplex, because you've got some regulations here that aren't applicable to other dwellings. The 5-foot setback, for example, should be a 30-foot setback typically, right, if you were to build a duplex.
Right.
So, you know, now we're starting to really bend a lot of rules with that. So, the power, the utilities, the water, sewer, gas, is there a requirement that it be fed from the primary residence, or that it be separated, or how is that set?
We don't define that in this ordinance, and having discussed this with building and with CFU, they didn't have a position on that. So however it's done, if it's billed to just one of the, billed to the primary residence, you know, that's fine. If they want to separate it, they can separate it.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
First, I appreciate when I think it was Councilman Ganfield maybe who made this referral. I recall, I think last year about this time, a person who maybe was new to the area had come before council and spoke about they had maybe a mother or someone who's an in-law maybe that they lived outside of the downtown character district, and they spoke to the council at that time about wishing that accessory dwelling unit was extended farther. And so I'm very happy that we're in this conversation. I don't wish to move away from owner occupied or you know, I kind of just at this time, as planning and zoning maybe spoke to, would like to proceed with caution and just stick to what we, you know, I think we're basically replicating what we have right now in the downtown character district.
Yes.
If there's a need for change in the future, well, then that council can look at that. But as of now, I think it's meant to kind of be maybe for an aging parent, or you know, it's not meant to be an income property at this time. It's meant to be able to have someone live close to you for whatever reason it is. So a family member or you know, maybe a close friend. I don't know. But I like it the way it is. I don't want to mess with it at this time. And I really appreciate that we're hopefully moving forward with this.
Counselor.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. I agree with Councilmember Dunn. I think, Kevin, I'd like an opinion. If we were to make a motion to amend, that's inappropriate. We'd have to shoot this down and then refer for changes.
Yeah, because P&Z hasn't approved the amendment you would have made by them.
Okay, we'll save that referral. I guess I think I've asked enough questions. We'll move on to the rest of the hearing.
Any discussion from council?
We'll have an opportunity when there's a motion to
Yep.
discuss, right?
Yep, we will.
That's what I'm waiting for.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
And any public comments on this item? Just name and city, or name and address, please.
Craig Fairbanks, 405 Spruce Hill, Cedar Falls. And I'm also a builder and developer. And I don't come to object to the program at all. In fact, I think it's a very good start. I can see with the unaffordable conditions for young families, this would give them a great opportunity to access the housing market to start to build wealth. I haven't seen anything else that's been out there that will address those issues for those young families. I wish they all had the same opportunity we had, buying a house for $16,000 that was 820 square feet when I first started. And it had 3 bedrooms and a bath and a decent living room and an eat-in kitchen with a garage. And at that time, that was a great place to live. And it did start us into the equity, into the housing market, and it was very profitable. But I agree with some of the comments that were made about making things too restrictive so that it doesn't work. I do like the idea of having more than 1 bedroom, mainly because of the size. You know, maybe there's a restriction on a smaller space that makes sense. But at 800 square feet, I think it only makes sense if we're looking for single people, potentially who have kids, to have a separate space for them. Now, if we are allowed to have a separate space for an office, I can only see that being used as a second bedroom. But anyway, those are the objections that I had. One of the things that came up during the planning and zoning meeting, I had asked about the success of the ADU program in downtown Cedar Falls, and it's none. Is that because it's too restrictive? Somewhere we have to let the market work. And talk to real estate people, talk to builders, talk to developers about what they're seeing in the marketplace and what they're asking for. But I have no objection to the ADUs in any way, shape, or form. In fact, if it goes through, I might do one myself. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairbanks. Any other public comments? Just name and address, please.
All right. Kim Jensen Jordan, 2018 Minnetonka Drive. I'm coming from this as, again, I've had about 27 years of landscaping. Gone out to many people's homes, and they're always trying to address things within their yard. When they do that, and I guess with landscaping, I'm looking at the interest of all people. So I guess that's my common theme. I'm looking at the hospital for all people. I'm looking at this little project as all people. What about the neighbor? What about the waterway of 800 additional square feet that's going to go through someone's backyard that's going to end up in 2 egress windows? Insurance rates go up. What about adding on to the house as opposed to doing that separate unit? We have backyards that in a wet spring are going to be 30 to 4, maybe even 50 foot wide, and then narrow and permeate into the soils. We've got some pumps that are draining, and we're still trying to, as a city, address some of those issues, which when I go walking, I can hear sump pumps and water kicking out all the time. So as we look at these, I'm also looking at airspace. I love trees. I don't want to take away the neighbor 2 houses down, overstory tree that's blocking the late hot afternoon sun, but yet someone wanted to go up. I'm looking at an aging mom that's 83 years old that has a broken hip, that all of a sudden, whoops, we needed 36 wide doors instead of 32 or 34. Who are we building these houses for? How are we leaving the future? Who are we making as a taxpayer in our neighborhood that's lived there for 35 years, having to change their lifestyle, maybe call a landscaper to now address a site issue that they don't want to look out their beautiful $50,000 kitchen remodel, and now they're looking at windows or a wall to a house. Those are the concerns. I care about the people of Cedar Falls. I want progress, but sometimes trying to squish another sardine house in so that you can elevate your own needs when you could move to a different property or build on some of these other developmental sites, those might be a better condition. But it's not up to us to say that. It's just us to enforce and stick to our own rules. Maybe offer no tax incentives for new builds onto a house that you want to add on a mother-in-law suite. Lower the property taxes. Let them build on. We already know how much water is going to go into the waterway, but we're not going to redirect it around another freestanding unit. So those are some things I really wish that planning and zoning would also look at and kind of address as human needs, taxpayers' concerns, and what we try to do to make our afternoon when we go home from work enjoyable. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kim. Any other public comment for this item tonight? All right, seeing none, we will, oh. Geez, you just threw me off there.
Visible.
You
I
blended
wasn't
in.
planning on saying anything. Kyle Larson, 4104 Wedgewood Drive. If the tone of this, as I'm sensing, is to disapprove the proposal and refer back to P&Z for some adjustments, I would totally agree with some of the comments earlier about 2 bedrooms making more sense. If the aim of this is curbing housing affordability and availability, there'd be no reason not to pursue that. The other thing I wanted to mention was about the rental idea. I wanted to add some context to undemonize rental. And the reason I say that is because we have, my company has a number of properties that we've rented out, and occasionally run into questions as to whether it's rented or whether it's owned. Sometimes it can be great to have a tenant rather than an owner if it's an undesirable situation because their time is limited, whereas if you have a bad neighbor that owns their house, you could be stuck with them forever. But the bigger thing is to consider that everybody is just people, and the reason they might be renting might because they're coming out of a divorce or they have a credit situation. They're not necessarily a certain sort of stereotype type of occupant. And I think that's important to consider, especially in Cedar Falls with how restrictive the rental permitting system and point system is currently. I think there is not a lot of, there's actually less latitude, I think, for a tenant than there is for an owner in a lot of cases. But the big thing to do with that is affordability. Back to that again. I just sold a house last year that it was a newer built house in the last 10 years, and it sold for $340,000. Well, we were market limited on renting that house for just over $2,000 a month, and at $340,000, if you do the math on it, to have somebody own that, part of the American dream or whatever, if they were only putting 5% down on it, let's say, the payment would be the better part of $3,000 a month. So right now, today, for anybody that's economically prudent, it's kind of a renter's market and not necessarily a buyer's market. And I think we should keep that in mind when considering anything that would inhibit the ability to rent, because that could be the only affordable or sensible option for normal people, not just the typical tenant, as people tend to ignorantly think. So anyway, that's all I wanted to do, is add some context to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Any other public comment for this item? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and for motion to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to allowing accessory dwelling units in all zoning districts that allow single-unit detached dwellings upon its first consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded, and any discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor, I think as we were talking about, we'd have an opportunity to chat. I do agree that we would want to change this to open it up to have 2 bedrooms, and I think change to the, for basement units, to have an egress within each sleeping area would be a better specificity than saying you have to have 2 egress windows in a basement ADU. I'd like to see those changed, but as we can't do that tonight, I would myself go ahead and vote this down and then refer that change so that they can bring it to us post haste. I'm in favor of the ADUs. I also, just to speak to having one of them be a rental, that's great, right? To have an owner occupied requirement on the primary or the ADU is good to keep in there. I don't want to change it so that they can both become rentals, not that there's a stigma, but I think those couple of changes would be what I'd want to see.
Mr. Mayor. Question for Mr. Levy. Size minimum? Was it 500 feet or something?
125.
The size was 800 square feet.
Maximum.
Or half of the living space of the principal dwelling,
That's the-
whichever is less.
For the maximum. The
What-
minimum was
What's the
125.
minimum?
Oh, the minimum is
Minimum.
125 square feet. So
So a 10 by 12 bedroom with a door on it.
essentially,
Okay.
Has to have a bathroom and a kitchen.
yeah, it's still have to have some things figured out there, but
Okay, that's interesting because in an ADU that I know of in California, they got this cool little door, you open it up, and the dining room table pops down out of the wall. So that's the kind of thing we would be creating, I suppose?
I mean, it depends on how
Okay,
people design this thing, but it's, yeah,
I digress there a little bit. But
there are, well,
then there is, to clarify, there is no off-street parking requirement for this occupant.
correct.
Okay.
If I can speak to that real quick, I think that's an important point to the one bedroom. We'd start probably talking about a parking requirement if we start to add bedrooms. But that's a separate issue. So.
We wouldn't have to talk about that. We could just say that you don't need off-street parking for the occupants of the ADU. But,
right.
Are you saying you're okay with less parking requirements?
Yes, that's what the streets are for. I mean, we have 31-foot streets for a reason. But I want to echo Councilor Ganfield's sentiments there that I am going to vote no because I want to see discussion at Planning and Zoning to look at the 2-bedroom scenario, 1 egress per bedroom in that case, or if it's a studio, as we meant, a 125-foot square room, the front door would be an egress and 1 window would be an egress. You don't need 2 egress windows in a 125 square foot little room and a door. So those are points that I'd like to see Planning and Zoning discuss and give some more latitude on this, because I think that's very appropriate. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
I took the opportunity to watch the Planning and Zoning meeting and the discussion about this issue. My memory is there most certainly was a discussion about having an additional bedroom. My memory is also consistent with what's been stated here is that it's in the downtown area. This is a decision to make ADUs citywide. And so it's kind of baby steps. And my concern is that perfect, in the eyes of whoever's talking, is going to be the enemy of good, or at least action forward. And so I'm in favor of accepting what was discussed already at Planning and Zoning as passed 7-1 and put before us the ordinance that they've suggested at this time. And I think if we had the members here, they would say at this time, that's what they were comfortable with, as I am now. And I also think we would have then more time to amend it in the future to accommodate requests for additional bedrooms and that sort of thing. But wouldn't it be nice if we had an ordinance citywide that allowed for ADUs that then we can tweak down the road? So I'm in favor of passing it as is tonight.
And Attorney Rogers, quick process question. So another route could be approving it, but then also still with the referral that we'd also like to go back to P&Z to look at some recommended changes.
In the future?
Sure. Yep. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
So I want to go back to the comments about anti-rentals. I've had rental property for 34 years, had renters that I consider great friends for years. If this is a rental program, I don't think we're coming around it in the right way. We're talking about an ADU program. So that's the difference. This is an ADU program. It's an owner-occupied with an auxiliary unit in the back. And so I'm in favor also of moving forward and having what we have. If we want to talk about rental, then we need to have a separate program that's going to address that, and that's a duplex. And we already have that, so.
Mr. Mayor.
Council.
I think that there is, I don't know that there is among this group, but I do think that in our community, sometimes there is a stigma around rental properties. I know oftentimes when a plan for a development potentially includes an apartment building, unfortunately, we often get emails that folks don't want to see an apartment building in their neighborhood because of, kind of like Mr. Larson was mentioning, the stigma attached with the folks that live in apartment buildings, which I think is so unfortunate because I'm going to assume that probably everyone sitting up here has lived in an apartment building. Probably everyone here has lived in an apartment building at some time in their life. And, you know, that is so unfortunate. I do agree with what Councilmember Schultz is saying. I think that the point of this particular item was not to address our rental units or necessarily our affordable housing needs, and that we do have some other plans in place to start to look at those things. And I think if we hear back from folks that this is a potential way to address some of those issues through ADUs, then we should reconsider it. But I think for now, this plan is great at what we requested, at accomplishing what we had requested, which is having accessory dwelling units throughout all of Cedar Falls, not just in the downtown area. So I'll be voting yes.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, I wanted to double check. My understanding is that the accessory dwelling unit could be a rental so long as the primary residence is owner occupied. So we are actually accommodating
Correct.
some of what the housing needs assessment recommended this for. I do agree with Councilman Hawbaker's, we'll push this forward so that we don't delay any further, get them on there. But I do think I'll go back and revisit that section and the discussion about the bedroom limits, because I think it would be wonderful. An entity like House of Hope or somebody in that situation comes to mind where we have single families that have young kids, and I surely think that those kids could be afforded some privacy of their own bedroom with a closing door and a closet, et cetera. So I'd like to make that later, but I'm amenable to getting this forward and tackle that at a later referral.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Yep.
Echo what Councilman Ganfield and Halbaker have both said. I think this is a starting point. I don't think this is the end of the conversation. Would like to see this move forward. The comment was made that we don't have any ADUs in downtown Cedar Falls as it sits right now. So I guess I'm curious to see what momentum this does or doesn't provide us by extending it outward. But I do think it's a starting point. So I don't disagree that I could see there being benefits to more than one bedroom, but I think this is a good starting spot. So at this point, I'll be voting yes on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
One little follow-up comment. I do distinctly remember one of the talking points on this was to produce supplemental income for some retired folks, widows, that sort of thing. So it is very specifically, could specifically be a rental, regardless of the stigma, whatever everybody talks about. But that is one of the very big benefits of having something like this, that someone that's not in a person's family could be renting this 125 square foot place with 2 egress windows in it, I guess.
And that's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
All right.
I'll vote yes to make
All right.
everybody happy, and then I'm going to do a referral immediately right after to change it.
Okay.
Get the process going.
We'll wait till the end of the meeting.
I'm telegraphing. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
if I may, just one last clarification to beat a dead horse about the windows. I'm actually looking at Attorney Rogers for this one for clarification. On item 6, G6, it says a secondary means of egress is not required for an ADU. That's subservient to an upstairs on a detached garage. In the same ordinance, it says that for a basement ADU, a minimum of 2 windows meeting egress standards shall be required. Are those in conflict? Where one says a secondary means of egress is not required for an ADU, period.
So I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent, but
I'd like you to.
there is distinguishing characteristics between a lower level and upper level. That justifies it. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or anything, but it's not internally illogical enough for it to be struck down.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other discussion from council? All right, seeing none, requires a roll call vote, please.
Okay, that's good. Getting there. There you go.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Move to old business, item number 5, passed ordinance number 3081, amending Chapter 19, Streets and Sidewalks of the Code of Ordinances relative to work performed within city right-of-way or property upon its third and final consideration.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second, and any discussion from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, requires a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 6, pass ordinance number 3082, repealing Section 346 Painters or Erectors License of Chapter 3 Advertising and Section 793 Bond Guarantee of Service of Chapter 7 Buildings and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinances upon its third and final consideration. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been motion and seconded, and any discussion from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 7, passed ordinance number 3083, amending Chapter 7, Buildings and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinances relative to insurance, and Chapter 25, Vehicles for Hire of the Code of Ordinances relative to liability insurance required upon its third and final consideration. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded, and any discussion from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 8, pass ordinance number 3084, amending Chapter 7, Buildings and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinances relative to bond and issuance, Chapter 10, Garbage and Refuse of the Code of Ordinances relative to unlawful dumping, filling on private land, and Chapter 13, Licenses and Business Regulations of the Code of Ordinances relative to bond upon its third and final consideration. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded, and any discussion from council? Seeing none. Any from the public? All right, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now move to the consent calendar. So the following items will be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Are there any requests from council for anything to be considered?
10.
10?
14, please.
10, 14. Any others from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve consent calendar items 9 through 15, excluding items number 10 and item 14?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded, and all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. So item number 10, motion to approve, or look for a motion to approve the following recommendations of the mayor relative to the appointment of members to boards and commissions for Tori Hale and Timothy Coleman.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded, and discussion from council.
Just wanted to say thank you to Tori and Timothy for volunteering to be a member of one of our boards or commission. It's a great way to serve your community, and you can visit our website if you're interested in volunteering your time as well and apply to be on one of our many wonderful boards and commissions. So thank you again, Tori and Timothy.
And I don't know, do we have Tori or Timothy here? There. I thought we had, so. If you'd like to come up and just maybe give a quick background and say hi.
Hello, my name is Tim Coleman, and I've been living in Cedar Falls for several years. I grew up on a farm between Waterloo and Denver, and I lived in Waterloo for quite a few years until I moved to this community. I've had an interest in local history for quite a few years. I worked at the Waterloo Library, where I ended up in the reference department and worked with the reference librarians on doing research on local history quite a bit. And that's when my interest in the local history sort of became important to me. When I was growing up, I didn't really know anything about the local area, so everything was brand new for me, starting from square one. So I've been going to the commission for the last year or so, and helped with doing the North Cedar project that was done earlier this year, and I'm sort of excited about the project that's coming up for the Overman Park research history that they're doing. So that sort of gives you an idea of my background.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
And it sounds like you've already been doing the work of being a commissioner for the last year, so thank you for doing it without actually being on the commission. So looking forward to having you on the team. All right, any other discussion for this item? All right, any discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Item number 14, approve the application of Greenleaf Tobacco and Vape at 6820 University Avenue for a cigarette, tobacco, nicotine vapor permit. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second and open for discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thanks. I requested this to be pulled. In review of our current city ordinances, we don't have anything on the books that restricts this type of business or its proximity from schools or daycares. And I'd just like to point out that this backs right up to one of our junior high schools right now. And that location to me is just, it's concerning. So probably future telling there, you'll probably hear something from me about this in the end of the meeting as well. But I'm just curious, do we know how many of these we have in the city presently? Do we have a sense?
Attorney Rogers?
I don't know that we have a sense. I would say that we've probably had 3 or 4 newer ones in the past year to 2 years.
And are any of those butted up to a school?
I don't go to those shops, so I don't know for sure.
Same, but
There is.
I just want to point out that the location to me is concerning, and it's unfortunate because as it sits today, we don't really have a lot of recourse in this, so it doesn't really feel to be self-serving to vote yes on a project like this, but we don't have something that precludes us from stopping it at this point, so.
Okay, and I'll echo some of that concern of nothing against tobacco vape shops. They're businesses in our community, but when we realize the address, do have some concerns that it is allowed right next to a school, especially one of our junior highs. And so I know we've talked in the past about looking at some ordinances around similar establishments. So I know I've heard from some that would be an interest for probably goal setting this year is to look at some possible ordinance changes on those allowances.
I also think the lighting, I know for those that are currently functioning, they have some rather bright lights.
LED.
All right, so any other discussion on this item from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
If I may, I'd actually like Attorney Rogers to clarify what little bit we could on this. I'd love to be able to turn it down. I do know that that would probably open us up to some litigation. So obviously the recourse would be to establish something. I guess I'm wondering, a quick browsing of state code says that a city or county may issue a tobacco permit and that the city clerk would issue it. I have 2 concerns. 1, in the wording of may issue is different than shall issue. And 2, why are we the approving body if it's just already spelled out in code? Do we need to vote to approve this?
State law does allow a city to determine location, such as with zoning. If this type of use didn't comply with our zoning ordinances, we'd say no. In this case, it does. And so there's very little latitude now at this stage of the game for, remember, this is a cigarette or tobacco permit. And so I understand from the folks who handle permits that the applicant has complied with all the requirements, provided all the information necessary, complied with our code of ordinances. I would strongly recommend that we do not disapprove this application at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Does that answer your question, Dustin?
Nearly. For full clarity, what if we did not motion and second this item? What happens to that tobacco purveyor?
It's, I don't want to telegraph future litigation or the city's position on it, but I'll just say that there's an application pending before council, and I would sure like to hear an articulated reason for voting no, if we were to vote no.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
When, Mr. Rogers, you mentioned the zoning fits for this particular applicant, we could in the future decide to create a zoning area around schools of X number of feet that would limit certain types of businesses that is not available to us right now.
Zoning is within one of the police powers of a city.
Okay. If you have an existing business that a future zone would not allow, do they get to continue and be grandfathered, legal
Yes.
non-conforming?
Yes.
And could we design it?
Because their application was approved.
Precedes
the change
Sure.
in the ordinance.
Then I know I'm trying to think of where, there are court cases that allow a time period of X number of years for a non-conforming business to recoup their investment and then eventually become closed or out. And I can't think of the legal terms for that. I think it's amortized out their value. I think one of the examples I read was the old billboards out in the places. They allowed that to exist for X number of years. Would that apply to something like this with a business?
So there is a body of case law that talks about amortization of nonconforming use. And the idea is for folks who have invested to recoup some of their investment when they're brought into compliance. I would say that it's very, very fact dependent upon whether or not that would be successful, how the ordinance is structured, the particular business is affected. That all would play a part, so I'm not prepared to pronounce how that would all turn out. I would also add that this idea of making an ordinance like that retroactive has not been tested for a business like this anywhere that I'm aware of, period. So I'm certainly not going to predict an outcome of that.
Just in general terms, there's a procedure that could be utilized.
There is a procedure for amortization for nonconforming uses.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, how long are the permits good for? A year? Are they applying every year, 2 years?
Yes, it's 1 year.
So it'd be 1 year. If in the meantime an ordinance change was put in place and you had so many feet or distance from a school, they would have to adhere to that. It would be a new situation, correct? Or is it once you get approved, that has no applicable to it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not going to, I don't think I should comment on that at this time. We can talk about that offline.
Council's comfortable with it, knowing there's some concerns here. We can plan to follow up on looking at
some research,
some of the ordinance potential changes and what is possible if there's concerns about the location of the business. Okay, any other discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
If I may, I'd like to articulate the rationale for my opposition. While it is not a scheduled narcotic, all property within 1,000 feet of a school is a drug-free school zone. I'd also like to prevent the addictive properties of tobacco and might contribute to the delinquency of minors. So for the protection of our students that traverse that way, the only pedestrian crosswalk across University goes directly to this building and then the middle school. I'd like to vote no for those reasons.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other
Mr. Mayor,
discussion?
I don't suppose we have any sense how many feet away this is, do we?
From the school zone?
Yeah.
0. It's the
Thank you.
backyard.
I agree.
I do think, technically speaking, I do think the back parking lot is a separate parcel. So technically, there is a small parcel, but you're talking.
Practice field's got a fence directly on the property, so I still say 0.
Any other discussion from council? All right, any discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, this requires a voice vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we see, we'll switch on, all in favor, show of hands. And all opposed. Did you get that? All right. That motion carries 4-3. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we will move to the resolution calendar. So the following items will be acted upon by a roll call vote and a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately.
19 and 28.
Well, you gotta let me get there, Gil.
Oh.
Are there any requests for items to be considered separately in the resolution calendar?
19 and 28.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm looking.
19 and 28.
Mr. Mayor?
One sec. 19 and 28, Gil?
Yes.
And 28. Yes.
32.
32. So 19, 28, 32.
29, Mr. Mayor.
Which one?
29.
29. 29. Any others from council?
Number 30.
30? We can just take them all separate.
We're going to get there because I'm going to request 40.
Item 40.
We haven't set a record yet, so I know there's been more.
Any other discussions or items that council would like to see considered separately? All right, just to recap, we've got items 19, 28, 29, 30, 32, and 40. Okay, is there any from the public that would like to be considered separately? 33. Right. Let's see, 23. And 31, you said?
31. Okay.
I reflect.
We're
Okay.
getting close to a record here, though.
All right, any others from the public? All right, so seeing no others, we will look for a motion to approve items 16 through 40 on the resolution calendar, excluding items 19, 22, because that item was removed from the agenda per the earlier conversation, item 23, item 28, item 29, item 30, item 31, item 32, item 33, and item 40. Do we have a motion to approve all the other?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is seconded and requires a roll call vote, please. Get all those?
Think so. All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we'll move to item number 19, a resolution levying a final assessment for costs incurred by the city to mow the property located at 803 through 805 Tremont Street. Do we have a motion to approve?
Second, or, yes,
Motion?
do the first one.
And a second.
Motion seconded, and forgive me, I don't remember who polled what, so.
That was me.
Yep.
Probably not relevant, so I'll just make a brief. I think I've worked with Stephanie quite a bit on this piece of property, not just on mowing. So I think we have some other things to maybe take offline. Is that right, Steph, or do you have?
I'm not prepared offhand to comment.
Okay.
The resolution is about mowing fees.
Yes, yep. I read that part. Couldn't help it, though.
All right, any other discussion, Gil?
Nope.
Okay, any other discussion from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none requires a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 23, resolution levying a final assessment for costs incurred by the city to remove a tree from the property located at 1937 Clay Street. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Been motioned and seconded, and any conversation from council? Seeing none, any from the public? Just your name, please.
Kim Johnson Jordan. Any tree, I guess, within any property, but particularly to this one, what if there's volunteer trees, that need to come out? I guess I pulled this just because there's volunteer trees that kind of are everywhere, and yet how do we go about having short staff and city going and
We can only
pulling
comment
those?
on the specific
Okay.
resolution levying the assessment, not necessarily on
What kind
process
of
tree
cost
removal.
was that to that property owner? And was that a dead ash, or was that, it was a dead ash? And was it a letter that had gone out and gave them certain amount of time to get that off
Can you just
the
speak to the
property?
process quick for that, Chase?
Yes, we have multiple different zones in which we've been sending letters for the dead ash trees. Over the last few years, this specific property owner elected to have a city, not a city contractor, but a private contractor remove that. Gave consent to the city, but that dollar value is in your packet. It was $2,500.
Okay. And the homeowner chose to have us?
Correct.
Do it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, is there a standard, or do we have a price that says this is above and beyond what really should be assessed, or? Have we set a criteria on that?
Chase, I'll let you answer this, but typically we won't get into describing the
Okay.
process, but if you could just answer
I
that
guess
quick.
I don't know what you mean by that criteria. Every case for each property is different. A dead ash tree is spelled out in our ordinance under the section for dead or invasive species or diseased for that criteria. And I can get that to you after the meeting if you
Yeah.
like.
I just know of trees that are very challenging to get to, and someone may not want to go through that, and they may just let it fall on the city at a very high expense. I know of one that was $10,000 just to do removal. So,
Thank you, Kim. We do need
yeah.
to. All right. Thank you. So any other public comment for, excuse me if I get my numbers right, item number 23? All right, seeing none requires a roll call vote, please.
I'm not refreshing.
So his just says voting is not open.
Hey, there it is. There we go.
I was going to say, talk nice.
Well, now it won't click to submit.
You can just say it too, and we can just record it.
It's a yay.
There we go.
There we go. All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move to item number 28, a resolution approving additional funding relative to the community natatorium project. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And the second?
Second.
Motion and seconded, and any discussion from council or pulled it?
Well, I asked that it be pulled. I don't know who else maybe have countered that. So obviously, this is a area we visited frequently. From my personal standpoint, I will tell you, I've made donations to support it. I think it is worthy of discussion here tonight for the additional money being asked. So I see that doctor's in the house. If you want to discuss this, or who wanted to.
And Dr. Petit is here.
Yes.
To answer any questions if anybody has any, but otherwise, open it up for just conversation with the council.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yep.
Yeah, my questions are less for Dr. Petit on that side, but more for our staff, as I see in there that the budgeted items that we've already planned for would need to be significantly adjusted, including items for which the funding would be pulled, like the College Hill rezoning, the Parks Master Plan, which we already have underway, the retail deconversion dollars for the next 3 years that we talked at some length about in the last 2 budget sessions, not to mention ensuring that we'd have a tax increase required by saying, oh, we're going to pay this. So we all want the new pool, but with all the already budgeted items that need to be postponed or eliminated, I don't know how we can approve this third request for funding increase. Is that a correct assessment? I guess I'm looking for city staff, Jen or Stephanie, that we would have to impact all of those items that were listed in the packet?
No, you named maybe, I'm not sure if we understand. It sounded like you were almost saying that we'd have to delay the Parks Master Plan. No, that's not the case. No. So what the first bullet point talks about is utilizing $145,000 of fiscal 25 and fiscal 26 planned general revenue to delay the comprehensive plan and zoning code update. And I went on to explain, hey, the planning staff capacity is kind of limited. We're already working on major thoroughfare plan, the Parks Master Plan. So I was just explaining there why we would support delaying the comprehensive plan funding.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
So, Mr. Ganfield, did you have another thought?
No,
I didn't
that's the
mean to
same. There's a
interrupt.
couple other items that are still needing to be pulled, so I'm still a little hesitant.
We are, we're looking back. I've had some computer trouble here, and Kim was nice enough to come over and get me back to where I could vote, but I lost the details of some of this. So it's from memory that we started off at like 14.7 million or 15 million, and that we initially as a city did 4.7. And then in 2023, we came back and said 8. And I think the ask now is, might as well say, another $1 million. So is that what the rest of you are gathering too? So I'm in that boat too, that I thought going from 4.7 to 8 was a very generous when you look at where our taxes are coming, right? School, city, county, and so are we dipping into the pocket again that should be in the other pocket?
Mr. Mayor? Sorry, Gil. are you-
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Could staff remind me what the estimated cost, if we went alone, if we were to build because we need a pool no matter what, we need an indoor pool if you're into having a year-round pool and providing those amenities. What was the estimated cost, and this would have been probably a year or two ago, but of us going alone? Because I remember that being a fairly large number. Does anybody remember?
I don't know that we have that number tonight, but it would depend on a lot of factors, how big, how.
Do you think it'd be more than 9 million, Ron?
I bet it would be around that right now.
Yeah.
Again, depending on a lot of factors.
Sure. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is I still think, I get the concern and if folks have reached out, but also I think, well, what are we going to do? Just stop? Like, we've already invested a fair amount of money, so let's get it over the finish line here. And
So we keep
I
on
think we're
moving sorry, Kelly. So we keep on moving. So we committed to set 4.7, almost 5. Then we committed almost another 3 million. So at some point, there is an end at some point.
Well,
that we got to look at the taxpayers and said, you were taxed a school tax, and you were taxed for your city.
Mr. Mayor, not to be rude, but can I finish my speaking?
And I was going to say, just for the reminder, let's not cut each other off and let each other finish the comments before we jump in, so.
Okay, and I understand what Councilman Ganfield is saying. I believe this is fairly close to being completed. If I'm correct, I was at the school recently and had some conversation, so I don't take away from that at all. What I'm saying is we're almost there. Like I said, I think we're still getting, we're not spending, I don't believe, any more than we would have spent had we have gone it on our own, and I think we're getting a much better facility for our community. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Counselor. Yep.
Thank you. I guess I'd ask a question of the school representatives here. If this is declined, what strategy or process would you have to raise the money? And could you elaborate on how far along we are with things? Because I believe you're going in phases as money comes available, that sort of thing.
Yes. Andy Pattee, Superintendent, thank you. And thank you for the previous conversation, too, regarding safety of kids and location of some of the potential future commercial properties. So a couple different things. Yes. The history of this, I think Gil is correct that we originally had a budget of about $14 million for an indoor and auditorium pool, another name for that. What happened was we started then working with our community. We started to work with our swim community. We started to work with rec staff. And instead of just a sole competition pool, which we currently have at both junior highs, it turned into 2 pools. One of a competition pool that typically is held at a higher temperature for swimming needs, one that's going to be a rec pool that's going to be at higher temperatures for community needs, for cool down. We knew through the rec department, through our community usage, through multiple conversations with many entities, including you and I, including some of our retirement homes, that having that rec pool as the only true community use indoor pool was extremely important. So that started to have that number go higher. I think the intent was to have kind of an even split between the city and school. The school now has more money in this than the city does. Just as city council is saying, you don't want to be here. I certainly don't want to be here, but this is reality. We did do phases. Phase number 1 was the shell. It included the HVAC. It included all of the components with lighting and some of the health and safety. Phase 2 is the pools. That has been bid out. That is why this number is where it is at, because it has been bid out. Because of that bidding process, that is now a firm number, and again, the school has more money into this now than we're asking for the city contribution. And that's not an issue because, again, we're so close to having this completed, that's where we know we need to be at. I think before I answer the question of what we'd cut out, I'd say the obvious question that each of you are asking is, what is in this for me? And me is collectively the city. There's a lot of things. Number one, we are the sole entity that owns the public pool systems in the city of Cedar Falls. Nobody else has community use pools besides what we have as the school district. Sharing is hard. Doing joint projects is hard. Most cities don't do that because we're in this situation where we're asking another entity to provide some additional funding because it's a joint purpose pool. Ames recently built a new school pool, a little over $25 million. City of Ames built their own pool because there wasn't a sharing agreement. They are over $50 million for those two pools now in the city of Ames. So your $9 million compared to what it could be is dramatically less because we're doing this in an efficient format, one that's going to allow more general use, more community use, as well as school use, and that is the end product and the hope. What else is in it for you? We think one of our greatest attributes as a father of 2 young kids is the falls. You have kids hopefully learning swimming because of this natatorium. You have lifeguards being trained so you can actually have the falls open. You've built and invested heavily in the riverfront, and hopefully we're going to train and teach kids how to kayak, because that's some of the courses we have within our current pools, to swim, to be able to have health and life safety responses if there's something happening. I think another important factor is, I don't know if you get calls, I get calls anytime one of our pools is down when we have rec open swim. Forbid when we have both pools down, there's a lot of calls because again, it is really a lifelong activity for our swimmers and the number of people that utilize our pools. This is going to be something, I think, what's in it for us. It's going to be a 50-year, 60-year investment for something that's going to be unbelievably positive for our community that we're going to be proud of because our current pools are not going to last long. That's just a fact because they were built in 1978. So yes, it's an additional investment. It's a firm dollar and it's a last dollar. Without these dollars, what's going to come out of this? I don't know because again, it's going to be potentially some of the parking. It could be some of the funneling and some of the components that we've looked at for that community pool to have that be a lesser inflow and circulation within that. There are not easy answers right now because everything is tied into trying to have a facility that is, we're proud of, and we don't cut corners on to say 20 years from now, well, now this is broken, this doesn't work, this doesn't meet the needs of our community. It's been a huge time crunch commitment by a lot of different people and a lot of different entities, and we are right there on the cusp of having this done and completed, which we're excited about.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Dr. Petit. One sec. Did you?
I guess if this is postponed, declined, the timeline can be stretched out. Fundraising can be done through the school, through other means. It doesn't just have to come from the city budget.
Yeah, it's not just coming from the city budget. We've actually increased fundraising. We've increased the city budget.
The $900,000 that you're asking for.
The $900,000 is the city asks, and then we'll be roughly at about 55-45 funding between the school and the city, with the 55 coming from the school. And that excludes the fundraising because the fundraising is a bigger component of that too. So what happens is there's going to have to be some really tough decisions, and there might be some limited access for community in some of the spaces and parts of the pool because those are the next reductions. There's not much you can reduce.
But you can certainly just go another year longer.
Well, I'll quick, just cut it off, just because I don't think we can get into talking construction.
Well,
I don't know
okay,
what the
I'm just curious.
contracts are.
Okay.
So I would say, if I can recap, though, it's going to be messy to not do it because we're going to have to look at a lot of different conversations about what gets cut, how does that work with construction timelines.
Councilman Cruz, I can also ask something, answer something regarding the fundraising as well as timeline. I'm Lorelei Redfern, co-chair of Jump In, and we greatly appreciate the generosity of the city. And this is a project that's been going on for some time, and I know we've been back several times. It's a project where the community has dug in and given more also than was initially asked. We're very fortunate to have two significant grants that help provide the funding for this. One is the Community Attraction and Tourism Grant, and then also a grant from the Black Hawk County Gaming Association. Both of those grants have deadlines by which they expect the project to be committed or their funding will not be provided to us. In addition, for the Community Attraction and Tourism Grant, the conditions of their grant require that the pool be completed in the fashion of which the plan was presented to them, which limits certainly the changes that can be made to the existing building plan. And again, we don't know if we would be able to receive approval to finally get the funding from them if significant changes are made to the plan.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So, Dr. Petit, you were short with saying there was phase one, which was the shell, phase two, which is this, and I thought you were going to start to say phase something else. Is there another phase something else? Or?
No, there's a phase one and a phase two.
Okay.
And phase two is the actual pool shells. It was a perfect storm with inflation as well as being a very niche market for pool builders. And so things came in higher than anticipated once bids were accepted.
And if I can ask you too quick, if I may go. Could you, I know the increased cost over what you were originally expecting is more than just the 900,000. Could you just kind of give a few details on what additional input you guys put in budget-wise? Because I know it wasn't just 900,000. There was some other funding you had to pull together.
Yes, no, we generated additional funding from our Jump In committee. The schools put in about $1.3 million of additional funds, and we're paying for more soft cost as well that we pulled from the bid packages because it's things that we can fund fairly, not easily, but whiteboards, some of the technology, some of the different furniture and things like that within the building. So there's going to be other soft costs that we're going to pick up to make sure that this comes to fruition.
Thank you, Doctor.
Mr. Mayor. Dr. Petit, is it safe to assume that the agreement you have with the previous school site, the funds that you receive from that are being applied to this project?
No, there's no funds that are from the bond, or excuse me, from the current high school. Yes, we've utilized some of those, but we've also utilized some of those for other purposes.
Referencing the lease agreement with the previous property with Waterloo Christian, is any of the money that you received from that being applied to this project?
Some is, yes. Yep.
And I appreciated that you at least identified some of the opportunities that maybe this relationship is providing for the city in terms of being able to train some of our own staff. We've struggled for years with trying to keep the falls open for the duration of a summer because of lack of lifeguards or anything else. It's good to hear the whitewater stuff is in consideration as well. I appreciate that. I just hope that with this additional ask that the school district will continue to look for opportunities to partner with the city as it relates with this project or others. Just I think this is a really big ask.
It is a big ask, and we know that, and it's an important ask for our community as we look to the future, in my personal opinion. And yes, we always look at ways to be efficient and work with the city. I think that is one of the greatest aspects of Cedar Falls, is that collaborative approach. We try not to be redundant. We try not to duplicate and spend multiple tax dollars on the same project, and we try to be as efficient as possible. And I think that's what this is accomplishing. Again, I believe Ames would be the greatest example, and if you want to spend and look at what they spent, over $50 million for two separate pools, we are going to have one pool in essence for about $24.9 million that is going to allow us to again, be proud for the next 50 years of the collaborative approach that we've undertaken.
It's a great number to pull. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with what Councilman Lott has said as far as their working relationship with the school district, and I do appreciate your comments about all of the good that the city will see. I mean, I think in a lot of ways that's why we were agreeing to the $8 million in the first place. And as I see it, there's a lot of good. It is cheaper, to Councilmember Dunn's point, to us building our own school, especially with the examples that you gave. And enjoying poker every once in a while. We're a bit pot committed at this point, and so I think it's important to plow ahead with this ask. And I understand it's with pain that you come asking, and with pain that we give. But I think overall it's a benefit for everybody. So I'm in favor of it.
Yes, I would reiterate, we don't want to be here either.
Any other discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor. I'm done with you. No further
We're
questions.
dismissed.
I don't want to say
I'm done
that.
with you.
Didn't say that
I'm
right.
done with you.
No further questions.
Thank you both.
But, and thank you. If staff could elaborate on what we will do to accommodate this extra expense in our budget specifically, or are we just going to raise taxes?
It's in the packet.
I'd like to hear it so the public can hear it.
Okay, a couple points in the staff report about how we would come up with this funding. The first was to utilize approximately $145,000 from fiscal 25 and 26 plan general revenue that we had towards CIP number 55 for comprehensive plan and zoning code updates. So we would delay that, and we'll update that in the next round of the CIP with the council. Also utilize $75,000 from fiscal 26 and 27 anticipated general revenue towards CIP number 62, which is vision plan and zoning for the high school Sartori Hospital area. And staff presented in the report that since we talked about that recently, nothing really urgent, that perhaps that's something council could agree that we could move back. Next item was to eliminate the incentive program for conversion of rental homes to owner occupied, that's CIP number 56, and utilize the $221,000 in general revenue funds from fiscal 25 to 27. We also proposed delaying number 74 in the CIP, which is the turf replacement at Robinson Dresser, which was anticipated in fiscal 28 to utilize $87,500 in recreation center capital funds. We note that this field is showing signs of deterioration, so we'll just need to push that back, but it does open up the possibility to use rec CIP dollars. And then utilize some capital funds from savings in several accounts, one to be the Hotel Motel Parks funds, using $152,550. We allocate 3.5% of Hotel Motel Park to save for future park improvement projects, so it will impact future projects. And then Recreation Center capital in the amount of $157,550. We set aside a portion of fees from the rec center for large maintenance or replacement projects. Both the rec center and the falls are aging facilities, so we want to manage how much we take from that so that we have funds available to continue to invest in those. But we're proposing pulling another portion of funds out of that. We already, to meet the 8 million commitment, we're using, I think it was 1.4 million from rec center funds.
Okay,
And then finally, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
One more thing. Then utilizing the plan review and building permit fees from the pool project to support the construction cost, which was about $61,400.
Specifically to the hotel motel revenue, weren't we restricted on that in a pretty good way? Ms. Rodebeck, don't we have a restricted use on that? Can we divert it to that?
So you may recall that what was passed was 50% of hotel motel has to go to visitors and tourism. The other 50% goes to support, and it's kind of a multitude of things. I think it says cultural, parks, recreation.
Okay.
It's multiple things. But then in the budget, we have that chart that shows how you've kind of allocated that, like 17% to cultural, 3.5% to parks. It's right in there.
It's essentially still using it for parks as a pool.
Right, and this is just the parks piece of it. We're not taking it from the cultural line or doing anything different for that.
Then at future goal settings, we'll have to decide on those things that are postponed if we want to decide to fund those.
Correct.
As we originally thought, which would then potentially be a property tax increase to cover that.
Right, I think, as you do the CIP, we obviously would come, if this was passed tonight, our CIP would show those things being delayed. I think you are correct. One of the things that I think Stephanie put in here that she did note, so about 500,000 of it is cash we have in hand. hotel motel tax that we already have in hand, rec CIP dollars have in hand. The other is things that we don't have in hand, but we were planning on putting in the FY '26 budget, or '27 or '28, whichever one. So I think, for you guys, I do get the concern, and I think this is where you're getting maybe to property tax increases. Those are things that, let's say the FY '26 budget comes around, those could have been dollars you could have said, hey, to lower the tax rate, we're not going to do those projects. Well, now you've kind of already committed those being in your FY '26 budget or '27. So I think that's maybe what's being alluded to as a property tax increase. So I don't know if that kind of helps explain that piece of it.
Yep. Thank you, Jen.
That's all just a guess, though. We don't know that we're going to have to, we don't know what
Correct.
the impact of property tax is going to be, or even if we would have to,
Correct.
we could say that if, to Ms. Dunn's point, we're not having to build our own
Right.
pool, we could actually be lowering property tax because of that. So we're going to have to cross that bridge and hopefully we don't fall in and have to swim in the river.
Thank you. I'll just say quick from my end, from talking with everyone, I think a big concern I heard from everyone is we don't want people to think of us as, well, we don't have the funding, go to the city and ask for it. And I think from talking to everyone, I think everyone's aware that this is not, if we vote yes tonight, that's not what we're saying is, yeah, just come to us, we're willing to cover the costs. I've heard a lot of concerns from everyone, making sure we're being responsible with what we're doing with this, because, Daryl, to your point, doing this project might mean that Robinson Dresser doesn't get updated next year, and we have to wait a little longer for that. So I think just from my standpoint, I've heard a lot of, good concerns from everyone in talking through cost benefit of investing in this project. So any other comments, thoughts for tonight? All right, and any public discussion on this item tonight? Just name, please.
Kim Jordan. Disappointment, but happy to live in Cedar Falls. Education.
Kim, please keep the comments up.
Okay, education, physical education teacher, looking at junior high schools and really hoping that we would value curriculum, and knowing that we have the river project, knowing that we have the falls, public safety, needing public safety in all different sections of town, needing a hospital, fiscally responsible, both schools and city government. Just speaking, I guess, as a citizen, a parent, a teacher, a person that hopes to retire in a beautiful community, that we're all proud to say that this is our home and that we all have taxation with representation. And it's a tough pill to swallow when you've been teaching. I taught in Waterloo. I had the privilege of teaching in Waterloo, I should say. And I had students that were deathly afraid of swimming. It's important at that junior high age level. And it's really, really sad to know that we have been utilizing those two pools and we have not. 78 is a very new build. My house was built in 64. You put money and maintenance into it. Mr. Sartori in 1912, his son left $15,000, $1,000 a year for all of us to be knowing that we save for maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Any other public comment for this item tonight? All right, seeing none requires a roll call vote, please.
Six voting aye, one voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion carries. Item number 29, resolution approving and authorizing execution of a professional service agreement with Codametrics, Inc. relative to the College Hills zoning update project. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
Motion seconded. And Councilmember Cruz, think you pulled this one?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm that as I read the main components of the services we're requesting, that one of the things they'll look at is evaluating the actual areas around the College Hill so that it's representative of what would be, I think, the one university neighborhood, and more specifically, area number 3, thinking that there could be change in shapes, and I'm assuming that all this could be changed in shapes of areas 1, 2, and 3.
Right. One of the first things is to reconfirm the College Hill Vision Plan with all the stakeholders that were involved in the original plan, to reconfirm the goals of the plan, the goals for the zoning, and that could certainly be part of that discussion. But the focus was on character areas 1, 2, and 3, and how those should be implemented.
So the focus is, or we're not going to go beyond 1, 2, and 3?
No, there is a second, just like I outlined in the memo. And of course, as the council discussed, we were also talking about stabilizing the residential neighborhoods around those character areas, and the consultant providing some guidance on what they think the approach should be, if there's any changes needed to the zoning around those areas as well, and bring that back to the council. And part of the project is to say they're going to evaluate everything, then bring it back to the council and say this is what we would recommend for the approach for both the character areas 1, 2, and 3, and also to help stabilize those residential neighborhoods. And then of course you would get to weigh in on that as well before they would move forward with zoning code changes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? Does that answer everything?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, seeing none from council, any other discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
It's frozen again. Oh, there it is. I submitted. It's a yay.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Kind of laggy.
All right, item number 30, resolution approving an amendment to the PC2 planned commercial zoning district site plan for certain improvements located at 924 West Viking Road. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and seconded, and any discussion from council?
Yep, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
If I may, I pulled this one. It seems that the prior approved master plan for this particular property did say that there would not be a retaining wall. I happened to work right out there as well. It went in over a lengthy process, but then at inspection, we came in to find out that, oh, they went ahead and did the retaining wall anyway. I guess I'm concerned with that process, and I don't want to go into the zone of making us liable to legal litigation, but I just don't think this is the right way we do things, to say we've got one developer in town who has spent $17,000 to try and get an approved plan that has to be massaged into a workable plan, and then to have another developer that says, I'm going to do what I want, and you're going to change the process or the zoning or the ordinance to just fix it. It's not right. We've had a few of these things where, you know, I can understand you don't want to force somebody to tear down a garage because they put it on city property. You know, there's some impact, but I don't want to get a track record where, to quote a Dr. Philism I heard, we train people how to treat us. And I want citizens that comply with the code and get approval, and that process is easy. I don't want developers that say, I'm going to do what I want because Cedar Falls will change the rules. This is not the right way to do things, so I'm not in favor of changing it again, especially because this 9-foot tall retaining wall has to have a protective fence, and that fence is going to be 22 feet away from that retaining wall. I don't think that's going to be safe enough for kids that might be running around the soccer complex. This should have been done right with the initial master plan before they went ahead and built a 9-foot retaining wall.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. And quick, can staff give any just context to the background of the wall, previous conversations on how that was built? Is it currently, because I know you alluded to some of the ordinance piece of it, is that wall within what's allowed in the current ordinances? It was just built without approval, or did we have to give a special exemption within the ordinances to allow for that?
So this is in a PC2 district, which is a planned district, so they're required to come forward with the master plan. They amended the master plan to allow for this practice soccer field. And at that time, the reason we're bringing it back through the process is they didn't think they would need to do a retaining wall to be able to level the soccer field at the time. At least that's the way they characterized it. But as Councilmember Ganfield said, they did go ahead and build a retaining wall. So when we went out for inspections, we said, hey, this wasn't included in your master plan. So we need to go back through the process and ask to include this. So it's not that it's not allowed by code, but they have to ask for permission to change their master plan to include it.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
So recourse if we vote this down, what happens? Wall's already built, to Councilman Canfield's point.
We would have to talk with the landowner about removing the wall, and it impacts the ability to have a field there, most likely. The practice field that they were trying to accomplish.
Could you just clarify for that quick, the ordinances around the soccer field require that this wall be there?
Well, it's probably more of a space constraint. You know, the wall, the retaining wall's there to be able to create the size of field that they're looking for. That's what I imagine the issue is.
Mr. Mayor, as I read the memo, it was a grading issue. They found out that they in order to get a level playing field, so to speak, they had to build the retaining wall. The notes, as I see from the attachment to planning and zoning, is part of the request. They're going to build basically a safety fence or a guardrail or along that retaining wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is a building code requirement.
Right.
They have to, if there's a retaining wall over a certain height, that you have to have a guardrail. And so they would put in a guardrail to meet the building code requirements. They also have proposed an additional row of trees behind that guardrail to sort of provide an additional buffer against, between the guardrail and the top of the wall.
And has the guardrail and the trees already been installed?
No, this is part of their proposal.
Part of their proposal in the change to the plan. And this went before planning and zoning and that was unanimously adopted, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, to that point, not to throw stones at our volunteer commissioners, but this went through unanimous. 22 feet or 21 feet away, if memory serves, for a guardrail fence doesn't protect anybody from walking 20 feet and falling off of that wall. This isn't the right way we do this. It should have been having oversight. And in fact, that it went through unanimous without saying, hey, this needed to be done right is concerning to me. Obviously, at this point, we would make them tear out the wall and then gain approval and then restack it. What purpose does that serve? But the principle of the thing. So I still wish that we would do this appropriately from every developer for every project, that if the code is incorrect, we change the code before they go and do as they please.
Mr.
And
Mayor.
just to clarify quick, the code's not incorrect. Their master plan didn't reflect what they.
The code required master plan was incorrect, and in fact prohibited the exact thing they went ahead and did. I read the text of it. It said that no retaining wall would be allowed, and then they went, oh, I need it. I can't do that on my property.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Perhaps, I know we have some plans to look over our development process. Maybe something we need to consider is some repercussions should folks not follow the process. What does that look like, and what do other communities do when these types of issues occur?
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussions from council on this item? I'm giving a second just because I see some looks on faces. Okay, seeing no additional comment from council, any from the public? All right, none from the public. It requires a roll call vote, please. Having troubles again?
I'm still on College Hill. It hasn't moved along there.
Oh, no, you broke it.
I think it's my machine's broken. Oh, there we go. And yay.
Yep, it's a little behind.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move to item number, let me get my bearing straight, 31, resolution approving an amendment to the RP planned residence district master plan and site plan to reflect existing development and proposed construction of a building addition to be located north of Greenwood Cemetery and North Division Street, River Ministries.
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor, I think this one is one of those projects that is coming for approval before. This is the right way to do developments. I'm also excited for the development opportunity. I think it's a huge team effort, and a lot of independent dollars have gone into this, so I think it'd be a great project to move along.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion from council? All right, seeing none, any discussion from public? Also seeing none, roll call vote, please. It's okay.
Yay.
We're gonna get through this.
My machine is dead.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 32, resolution approving a planned residential RP zoning district site plan amendment for the Creekside condominium development relative to landscaped retaining wall located at the intersection of Cedar Heights Drive and Valley High Drive. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded. And I will quick throw something in here. I know I had some written information put in front of you. So I know one of the comments in there, I have talked with the developer. They did move some of the boulders on site for this, but they did discuss it ahead of time, just so we knew. They know it still has to pass. They know if it doesn't pass, they will have to remove everything. But for construction timelines, went ahead with moving that there. But they knew full well that there wasn't an assurance it would pass, and that they were just doing it to kind of keep the ball rolling. But they know it has to go through approval. So just wanted to answer to that. So any discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I pulled it in reference to that information, or that email that was put in front of us today. I'm just trying to get answers, and I apologize if maybe answers were already sent, but there was just a couple of things here that if we could try to answer. One of the questions in this communication was the concern was for it turning into a, quote, weed hill. So I'm wondering, is there an effort or something in the plan, and I apologize if it's there and I just didn't see it, to mitigate weeds, I guess, growing up in those boulders? That was one question in this email. The other question, and I think some of these may have been touched on in our packet, but just as we're here together, how this may affect water drainage in the area with the change from the, for those of us, those listening, it's changing from a retaining wall to a old boulder, more natural type barrier. And then there's the concerns to any future builds because of those changes as far as any effect for the water drainage. So if there's anything that can be added either by staff or the developer, I just want to make sure, since this, we didn't see this, or at least I didn't see it until I got here at 5:30, so.
Yep. We've got the developer as well, but I don't know, do we want to, Kyle, if you wouldn't mind?
Developer can answer those questions.
If you wouldn't mind just speaking to some of them, I can go through them quick. One was just the concern about weeds and the development, how that's being remediated. Another one was the water runoff.
Yeah, the question about weeds is pretty straightforward, and a question that would exist regardless of this change to the landscaping. Part of our development agreement and just establishing the homeowners association to comply with regular ordinance, and above and beyond that, a attractive and marketable site. The added maintenance to the area being changed is nearly negligible from the conversations that we've had. In the original conceptual design, there would have been buffer areas to what was drawn as a wall similar to this, and they would have required similar maintenance. And so we've identified species of plantings to intermix that would keep any weed growth at bay. And the same goes for the rest of the detention area and the rest of the site, and chemical treatment and everything else. So it doesn't really change anything that would have already been in place. As far as the water management, that was something that we were concerned about initially before pursuing the change or correction, as we've been calling it. And the civil engineer on the project took a close look at that and based on initial concern, and was able to basically improve the water detention condition with this corrected design. So there's not any negative effect on the water detention, bottom line. And as far as effect on future property development or values, this is kind of the last construction in the area. So, you know, the fact that it's being scrutinized by modern civil engineering standards will kind of finish it out to where the 6 acres of the Creekside condo project is up to date, an uncontrolled field that we'd been running into, you know, at random abutting areas and onto the street, and now part of a thoughtfully designed development project where the water is being managed and retained and released over a period of time. So any water conditions would be improving regardless because of the work being done. And then as far as this change, moderate improvement or not any sort of diminishing from what was designed previously.
Thank you.
And engineering department has reviewed all of those changes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm available. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Anything else? Nope. Okay, and any other discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Yeah, I do think that it adds a lot of beauty. I did hear from a couple of residents, this is in my ward, and they'd mentioned some things about the last minute change and the boulders moving. I think it makes more sense to move them while you're already moving them and to get the approval like the developer is doing. So I appreciate Mr. Larson doing that. If you look at the packet, it looks beautiful comparatively, and I know that the proponents of this from that local HOA are probably already envisioning hearing the laughter of grandkids that play on these that may not play on a retaining wall, while the critics are saying, yet again, it's another thing I don't like. So unfortunately, I think this is going to be, as Mr. Larson has pointed out, a better ad, so I'll be voting in favor of it.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion from council? All right, seeing none, any from the public? Seeing none requires a roll call vote, please.
Do my best.
And voice vote from Aaron, probably.
No, I
Oh,
closed
maybe.
all my other tabs. I closed all my other tabs.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And item number 33, resolution approving the certificate of completion and accepting the work of Peterson Contractors, Inc. for the 2023 street construction project and approving and authorizing the transfer of funds from the street construction fund and sanitary sewer rental fund to the street repair fund.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, and any discussion from council? Saying none, any from the public? I believe the person that pulled this may no longer be here. So it's also seeing none, will roll call vote, please.
I'm going slow. Just in case. I just.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And item number 40, resolution receiving and filing and setting November 4th, 2024 as the date of public hearing on the proposed plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the Searly Park Improvements Project. Do you have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion seconded, and discussion from council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pulled this just real quick to acknowledge that it's, and hopefully we'll have the vote that puts it on the calendar here in November, but the reason we're to this point is because there were significant efforts in the community, the College Hill Partnership, and certain grantors that provided funds that allowed the private match to reach the number we were supposed to reach to initiate the action on the Searly Park. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's contributed. So that's all.
Thank you, Counselor. Any additional council discussion? Seeing none, any from the public? Also seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move to ordinances. Number 41, pass an ordinance amending ordinance number 1923, 2122, 2461, 2696, 2785, 2923, and 2953, providing that general property taxes no longer be divided on certain property located within the amended Cedar Falls Unified Highway 58 Corridor Urban Renewal Area upon its first consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded, and any discussion from council? Seeing none, any from the public? I'll seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move to bills and claims. We have a motion to allow bills and claims for October 21st,
So moved.
2024. Got a motion seconded. Or roll call vote, please. Or any discussion from council, excuse me? And any from the public? All right, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any council updates or announcements? I see none. Really quick. Chris Latta, congratulations on your 20 under 40.
Thank you.
Even though you're technically 40 now and you were aged out of it.
That's right. Technicalities are great.
And too, just want to give quick credit to Councilmember Ganfield. You got your certification through the Iowa League of Cities for, what's the title?
Certified elected municipal official. It's more than a mouthful for no reason.
And then also
More initials
Kim,
behind your name.
and also Kim got her certification for municipal clerk. You're going to have to tell me, even though I know you don't like being called out.
I'm a municipal clerk.
You are a municipal clerk. So congratulations. So,
Don't forget to check out the mayor's Halloween house decorating contest.
yep. Judging is this Thursday, 7 o'clock. You can
Turn
get on
your
the
lights
bus with us. Any other council updates, announcements?
Mr. Mayor, just by way of friendly reminder, obviously, we will have one more council meeting before our national election, but if you are unsure at this moment, please educate yourself in the coming weeks, because it is important that all of our citizenry are voting. So please remember to vote.
Remember to vote. Second that. Not for a motion. Just. All right, council referrals. We have any
Mr.
items
Mayor.
for referral?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
As we stated earlier, I'd like to make a referral to address a two-bedroom option be incorporated into the ADU language. And with that, the egress window requirements that would match probably more closely to the current rental code of, for example, the studio of the, I jokingly said 125 feet, not needing two windows and a door. So something like that.
And I'll, just for discussion quick, would the group like to try and make that referral now? Because I do think since it happened in this meeting, and it does help keep the ball moving in the process, it's good to talk about. Would you like to discuss that now and try and get an actual referral? Or would you like us to try and put in wording a more defined referral to make the
Point of order.
Yeah.
Just for, without a second, I don't know that we can deliberate much, but.
Just, okay, yeah, motion and a second.
Well, I guess the question would be,
Is it pressing?
and I'll deem it's pressing just because it just came up. So motion to refer and look at specifically the number of bedrooms and the
Egress window requirement on a tiny ADU.
So the motion, we have a second? So not seeing a second on the motion. So that does not move forward right now, but knowing it was a discussion, we'll make sure
Okay.
and talk about it.
Follow.
All right, and we will now move to executive
Mayor.
session, so we need a,
Mr. Mayor, I've got one for you too.
oh,
Sorry.
yeah. Excuse me.
Just again, because it was brought up tonight, I'd like to make a referral to staff to evaluate potential options for an ordinance change as it relates to proximity of, let's go with vape shops, tobacco selling entities, and may as well look at the potential legalities of CBD or marijuana in the future as it relates to proximity to school property.
So we have a motion.
Second.
Seconded, and any discussion?
As long as it's clear enough for council to know what we're trying to avoid.
Clear as mud, or is that?
Sorry, staff. Refer back to ourselves.
It'll never be clear enough to council, but
Yes, amen.
Quick, staff, that give enough direction? I think we want to look at. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion seconded, and any discussion? Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. We will now move to executive session, but first need a, let me read it, but we'll look for a motion to move to executive session where we discuss property acquisition per Iowa Code, Section 21.51J, to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate, or only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price the governmental body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the governmental body would receive for that property.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Or any discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yep.
Roll call on that one.
Okay. Excuse me, yes, roll call vote on that. Thank you, Des.
Yes.
I was really hoping not to do another roll call tonight,
Still aye.
Had to stick it to you.
so. Yeah, one more.
Is yours vote, Daryl?
Oh,
Yeah.
It wasn't me.
Are you a vocal aye?
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we'll now move to executive session. The meeting is not officially adjourned. We will return after the meeting. You guys have to stick around till then. Just kidding. We will come back to officially adjourn, but at this point, no further meeting or business will be discussed. Thank you.
Chris.
They need a photo.